Hello and welcome to another episode of Gameworms. I'm your host, Reil, and today we'll be looking at another faction in Twilight Imperium 4, and this is from the Prophecy of Kings expansion. Today we'll be looking at the Nomad. Information on the Nomad is somewhat sparse. He, she, or they is or are a very mysterious figure or figures that recently appeared on the scene during the campaign toward regaining control of Mechatol Rex and reforming a galactic empire. So the Nomad didn't start appearing until shortly after the Kreis expedition. So just as a reminder, of course, we all know about the Kreis expedition that tore open a dimensional tear. But as the Kreis were trying to track down the planet of Ix, they found an ancient wormhole generator on Acheron, and they dug it up and started it. And then the Mahak blasted their planet through it, blew it up, and caused a tear in the fabric of reality. So I think right before that expedition, a whole bunch of radio waves, like ancient-style radio waves, started appearing, like signals, started appearing from the center of the galaxy, which is completely uninhabited. And these radio waves turned out to be thousands and thousands of years old, from like before the reign of the Lazaks. And then right after this incident with the Kreis expedition, this mysterious figure started appearing, going to different people, asking for information regarding in particular, the Kreis expedition and the tear, the dimensional tear. And in exchange, they seem to be offering like either huge amounts of money or very rare and valuable information. And so a lot of rumors start flying around, like who is this person or people. Very few have met this figure that calls themselves the Nomad, and say that they wear an environmental suit with like a merchant's cloak and everything. But nobody's seen their face. We did find some security footage at a commercial center in Yord, which we think may figure the person without their mask.
Greetings, my excellent friends. Gentlemen, I'm here to help.
What? How?
Whoa! Oh, I hate that part.
Bill? What? Strange things are afoot.
Dudes, you guys are gonna go back in time.
Yeah! You are going to have the most excellent adventure through history.
But whether or not that's actually the Nomad, we don't know. So a lot of the rumors around the Nomad involve how the Nomad's able to just kind of appear in different places in remote parts of the galaxy within days of each other. So some people think it's actually multiple people kind of in the same garb or costume. The person does certainly have followers or friends, because it's very rare they actually meet with their information brokers in person. They'll usually send one of their generals or lieutenants or something. So, but for most people, this was just kind of rumors, kind of just a passing mild interest. Until an incident at Sumerian space station. So there's a space station around a planet called Arcturus, completely encircles the planet. And I'll put it up here for you so you can kind of see. It's kind of a barren, icy planet. Really nobody lives on the surface, but it's a huge trading port, mostly because everything, you can buy and sell anything there. There aren't a whole lot of restrictions. So a lot of business is done there. The galaxy in general kind of turns a blind eye to what's going on there. But shortly after the appearance of the Nomad, just a lot of coincidences started happening, like contracts started to expire, deals started to be broken, and this Nomad, who just seems to have limitless supply of resources and money, just started buying up all these contracts, and just by coincidence, they were all kind of expiring at the same moment the Nomad appeared. People who would oppose this purchasing up of all these contracts in the Sumerian station, they would disappear, or information would come out about them, like the head person of the space station was actually arrested for something. So it seems like whoever the Nomad is, they seem to have just knowledge about everything. They seem to know what's going to be happening, and they have blackmail and bribes and just so nobody really knows who he or they are. But what's the general inside? This is inner circles. It's not even on the faction sheet. This is stuff from listening to interviews and stuff with Dane Beltrani and stuff. So apparently the Nomad is, or at least allegedly, a time traveler from a very dystopian future, and they've come back to try to change the course of history. And so the Nomad came back with 5 generals. And one of which, at least, there's a ghost of Kratos with him, is the last of his kind. And so they've come back to try to alter the course of events in modern times, or modern times in terms of Twilight Imperium, and create a better future. So they have a lot of abilities that seem to involve the manipulation of time and the use of rare information. So let's take a look at their faction abilities here. So they start off, not their faction abilities, sorry, we'll start off with their starting units and technologies. So they start with a new technology called Sling Relay. And what Sling Relay does, it's a new technology. It lets you to build it. You can exhaust it to build a ship at any space dock. So this is a nice feature because it doesn't require any activation or anything like that. So, they starting units, they are the only faction that starts with a flagship, and their flagship is a big part of their faction abilities, which we'll take a look at. They have a carrier, a destroyer, 3 fighters, 4 infantry, and a space dock. So between their flagship, their carrier, and their 4 infantry, pretty good ability to spread out right from the first round. So faction abilities. The Nomad has 2 faction abilities. The Company, which is during setup, take the 2 additional Nomad faction agents and place them next to your faction sheet. You have 3 agents, and we'll take a look at those guys pretty soon. Future Sight, during the agenda phase, after an outcome you voted for or predicted is resolved, gain 1 trade good. So this is kind of just a demonstration of how the Nomad kind of has some sort of inkling on how future events can play out, but now they can gamble on it, or they get money for predicting correctly. Let's take a look at their flagship, Memoria 1. So this is a unique flagship in that it is the only flagship in the game that has an upgrade. So this is Memoria 1. You may treat this unit as if it were adjacent to systems that contain one or more of your mechs. So your mechs essentially have a wormhole that's accessible only by your flagship. So if your flagship's destroyed, you have to build it back in your home system. You can just move it forward, as soon as you can, to any of your system that has a mech. It's got an anti-fighter barrage. Not great combat ability, but as you can see, the combat ability, the move, and the capacity are all going to go up on the upgrade. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the what the upgrade is, because that's one of its 2 faction technologies. So the upgrade is Memoria 2. So what the Memoria 2 is, it kind of just improves all of the abilities of Memoria 1. So the anti-fighter barrage improves from hitting on an 8 to hitting on a 5. It's still 3 dice. It moves 2 now, so it's a fairly fast flagship. The combat moves up to 5 with 2 dice and a capacity of 6. So a very powerful flagship and very fast compared to most other flagships. Their other faction technology is the Temporal Command Suite. After any player's agent becomes exhausted, you may exhaust this card to ready that agent. If you ready another player's agent, you may perform a transaction with that player. So this is great because another of the Nomad's special abilities is how many leaders he has, or she, or it, or they. And so this allows you to use one of your agents twice. And there's a lot of applications you can do with this, which I'll go into when we talk about the agents here. But that other nice thing is that you can allow another player to use this ability if you don't need it for some reason. And it'll allow you to do a transaction. So normally you can only do a transaction with somebody who has an adjacent system to you. But in this case, you can bypass that. I do want to take a look at their planet real quick, because they actually have a really good starting system. It's the planet Arcturus, and again, the planet itself is just a barren wasteland. But it's got that massive ring around it, this giant space station, which is kind of a hub of trade and very influential. So it's actually got 4 production, which is pretty good. I mean, it's middle. There are better systems, but that's a good system start. But it also has 4 influence, so it's pretty rare that you have a system with that much influence and that much resources. So that's a pretty good system. Let's take a look at their leader. So this is kind of... Oh, no. Let's do their mech first. Okay, so the mech is the Quantum Manipulator. While this unit is in a space area during combat, you may use its sustained damage ability to cancel a hit that is produced against your ships in this system. So that's pretty good. So while it's being carried, it also can soak a hit for you. Kind of a meat shield, I guess. Poke him on front of your ship. But again, he acts as a wormhole for the flagship, which for the Nomad, you're probably going to be using, your flagship quite a lot. So that's pretty neat. All right, so the leaders here. So you have 3 agents. You have your commander and your hero. So there's 5 of them, and from what I understand is that the 5 leaders are all the generals of the Nomad from the future. So it was the 6 of them, essentially, that came back in time to try to create a better reality for the future. And so the 3 agents, let's start with Artuno the Betrayer, who looks like possibly a either from the Mentak, Barony, maybe even Yord, the Soul. When you gain trade goods from the supply, you may exhaust this card to place an equal number of trade goods on this card. When this card readies, gain the trade goods on this card. So I think this is super useful. So just imagine if you're on the first round, you end up with trade, and you play your trade strategy card, you get 3 trade goods directly, but you can put another 3 trade goods on Artuno the Betrayer, and when you exhaust Artuno to do that, but whenever Artuno refreshes, you get those 3 trade goods off of her. And that's really combines really well if you have the Temporal Command Suite, because if you needed to, you could get those trade goods right away. You could just refresh her and take them. So that's pretty neat. I think the philosophy behind this is that as the Nomad faction, you kind of basically have Gray's Sports Almanac, or you have like tomorrow's stock market results. So kind of like you kind of know that how to invest your money. You know that, oh, it's 1995, I better invest in Google, or whatever. So they just know how to make money that way. Another agent, the second agent I'm going to look at is Field Marshal Mercer, who looks like one of the Argent Flight, or at least one of the Shikrai, whatever they're called, the bird people. Field Marshal Mercer. At the end of a player's turn, you may exhaust this card to allow that player to remove up to 2 of their ground forces from the game board and place them on planets they control in the active system. So I wouldn't say maybe as useful as Artuno the Betrayer, but still a nice way to boost, put forces up on your front line or to threatened planets if you just need a little bit more help somewhere. And my interpretation of that is, again, just being able to time warp people when and where you need them. The Thunderian is, interestingly, hacked from the future. So, pretty interesting ability on this one. So this is the Thunderian. After the roll dice step of combat, you may exhaust this card. If you do, hits are not assigned to either player's units. Return to the start of this combat round's roll dice step. So, much more situational. Like the first round, you might not even have any reason to use the Thunderian because, you may not get into combat for a couple rounds. But when you do and you have a bad round, sometimes you roll very poorly and your opponent rolls very, very well. Well, time loop, right? Go back in time, try again. So, again, another thematic application of this temporal manipulation of the Nomad. Okay, so the commander is Navark Fang, which is one of the Hakan. It is unlocked by scoring a secret objective. And Navark Fang's ability is to you can produce your flagship without spending resources. So again, your flagship and time travel seem to be two of the big features of the Nomad. So this means that every time your ship blows up, it comes back again. And so the question is he just rebuilding it really fast, or is it time looping? I think the story behind it is that when you blow it up, it's actually looping in time or something like that. But because it's a commander ability, you can give this ability to someone else by granting them the alliance card. And while it would be, I just think it would be hilarious to let the Yin, like if I were playing the Nomad and somebody else were playing the Yin, I would totally make a peace treaty with them to give them the alliance card so they could just. Because here's the thing, they wouldn't attack me because they want to keep using my commander to rebuild their flagship. If you don't know what the Yin flagship does, it's like the most terrifying one in the game. It just blows up and kills all ships in the system, like a suicide bomber. But if they can rebuild it for free, they just be throwing this all over the place. And of course, they're not going to attack you right away because it's your ability letting them replace it for free every time. So that's pretty neat. Okay, and then the hero of the leaders. This is the Ghost of Creus, who, again, is reputedly the last Ghost of Creus from that timeline, who has come back with the Nomad. The name is Axil Sivan, and the ability is called the Probability Matrix. So it can be used as an action. Place this card near the game board. Your flagship and units it transports can move out of systems that contain your command tokens during this game round. At the end of that game round, purge this card. So again, you're just popping through time and space, get all over the place. You can ignore tokens on the board, and this is for the whole round, right? So you just play this maybe at the beginning of the round. For the rest of the round, you're just moving your flagship willy-nilly. All right, pretty cool. The last thing with the Nomad is the promissory note, and it is called the Cavalry. At the start of a space combat against a player other than the Nomad, during this combat, treat one of your non-fighter ships as if it has the sustained damage ability, combat value, and anti-fighter barrage value of the Nomad's flagship. Return this card to the Nomad player at the end of the combat. So I think this is a pretty good promissory note, and obviously it's better once you, as the Nomad, have upgraded your flagship. But again, you're not using this. What you're doing is giving somebody else this card, and then they can appoint a destroyer, for example, that for one combat will have the abilities of your Memoria flagship. So I think that's a pretty strong promissory note. Probably get a good deal on that. And that's it for the Nomad. So now, an interesting thing with the Nomad is that of all the anthems, this is one you are expected to dance to. If you don't know how, don't worry, because they will explain it for you.